Turn buddy. Turn up for part 2s of things.
Dude, things got real crazy after last week's episode came out.
Sweet Mother of Mary.
Also, if you're one of the people still sending us links to articles about that dude,
no need to.
Thank you, but
no need to.
We got a few this week. Just
got
a couple.
Few. So
about every 10 minutes, 24 hours a day for the last week.
Here's what I'll say. Go join the Facebook group. Just go on Facebook and do the What If podcast, because it's a nice centralized location for people to hook a link, and then everyone can see that the link hath been hooked.
Holy shit! Hey!
So
that was me on vacation looking at our email and social media for the first time in a few days last week.
God damn! What the fuck?
Oh, dang.
So if this is your first episode of the show, this won't make much sense. Go back to last week's episode, listen to part 1 of What If You Lived in Isolation. We talked about...
Good point.
For a full hour, we talked about North Sentinel Island and the Sentinelese people who...
Or whatever they call themselves, which is probably
Not that.
A much better name.
Probably a much better name. That's just the only thing we have to call them. But they've been living since the Stone Age on this one plot of land in the Andaman Islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And so we talked through the history of these people. We talked about a bunch of different sort of interactions and experiences they had over the years with shipwrecked boats and British explorers and drunk fishermen, many of which culminated in, oops, these people don't like it when people come ashore, and they kill those people.
Well, yeah. It seems like they were mostly fine with it until that one guy started kidnapping and killing their children and subjecting them to weird medical tests and writing lots and lots of pages about the appearance of their genitals and doing all sorts of terrible, creepy things and killing some of them.
Right. So
after that, they took on a pretty strict policy of we don't fuck with y'all.
A very strict policy of nah. So we ended last week's episode alluding to a part 2, which we are going to do today. We're actually going to talk about isolation in a very different but related way, the isolation of space. But we got to spend the first chunk of the episode talking about something that, in coincidence of the grinding of gears in the universe, happened literally 36 hours before we recorded that episode, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, news of this came out the day of our episode coming out.
Right, which we had recorded 2 days before.
Yeah.
And the incident happened 2 days before that.
Yeah.
So we left the end of last week alluding to the next episode. But the last thing we said about the Sentinelese people was about a 2006 flyover that happened after the tsunami hit when they got checked on. But that was the last thing that we'd
That was 2004.
Or 2004,
2006 was when the
That's right.
fisherman guy fell asleep and his boat hit the shores and they killed him.
That's right. It's 2 of them, right? They killed both of them? 2 fishermen?
Sorry. Yep, 2.
But that was sort of the last interaction that had been newsworthy or documented or anything about the Sentinelese people. So in like 12 years.
Yeah.
And then 2 days before we do an episode on this show, guess what happened? Guess what? Guess what happened?
Guess what happened?
Yeah.
John Allen Chau, 26 of Vancouver, Washington, was killed with arrows when he landed on North Sentinel Island. He was attempting to convert the North Sentinelese people to Christianity.
Oh, John.
On November 17th, one day after his last journal entry, some fishermen saw tribe members on the beach burying a body that they believed to be Chau based on the silhouette of the body, clothing, and, quote, circumstances.
Yeah, you don't say. The circumstances of you're not supposed to go there and you done went there.
So far, there were 6 fishermen and 1 other person who have been arrested in
conjunction.
Yeah.
And they've been...
Well, so it's very illegal to go to the island or to go within a certain radius of the island.
Yeah, there's like a what is it, like 10 kilometers?
Yeah, there's a perimeter around the island that it's illegal to enter. For this very reason, and for the safety of the North Sentinelese people, they do not have immunity to many of the common things that we have immunity to, and contact with other people can be extremely dangerous and fatal for them.
Not to mention, too, just generally fucking up their sensibilities of the world by driving boats around them and by them, and
Sure, but like literally, it will kill them to have contact with the outside world, and it likely has. Their population has shrunk significantly over the last few decades.
This too.
So the 6 people, maybe 7, I've heard both reported, who helped him get there have been arrested. Some of those fishermen later took police back to the point where they dropped him off. So they took him to a certain point and then dropped him off in a kayak, and he went the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I heard go ahead.
Because those fishermen did not want to be killed with arrows.
Yeah. I heard he paid them like $375 or the equivalent of for ferrying him to where they ferried him to. And that he had some sort of kind of limited stock of goods in his kayak with him.
He brought some gifts.
Yep.
This guy.
And did I read correctly that this wasn't the first time that he had tried to do this?
It was the 3rd or possibly 4th time he had made some degree of some attempt to reach the island.
Interact or contact or...
Yeah. But so the fishermen brought police back to where they had dropped him off. Police from a boat got within about 400 meters of the coastline, and using binoculars saw many tribesmen standing on the shore pointing bows and arrows at them. And they looked at each other for a while, and then the police said, "No, thank you.
Bye.
We will leave."
Bye.
So they've made a couple attempts to go back.
You know what? You right. Whoa, I'm nervous.
And they would like to ideally retrieve Chau's body, but I don't think that's likely to happen at this point.
No.
Considering anyone who's gone there in the last 20 years or so has ended up dead and not leaving the island.
This fucking idiot, man. Look, I'm not one to drag a dead man's name through the mud.
It sounds like you might be.
I'll give credit to the Facebook group. One of our listeners definitely dropped the best line I've heard to describe the situation so far, which is play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And I feel like you're not supposed to do it. They tell you not to do it. They police it to prevent you from doing it for a variety of reasons, for your safety and the safety of others. And guess what? Guess what happened? You fucking died. That is exactly what those parameters are in place to prevent you from doing. If you ignore all of that shit and you go do it anyway, and you go on the beach and yell, what did he yell? He yelled something just like, you're you know that they're 60,000 years old. They speak no knowable language in human dialect.
Here is, yes. So all of that, but maybe the stupidest part to me.
Yes.
Of all of this is like, yes, it sucks that this dude is dead. But maybe, like he, in his own journals said, "Oh man, I hope I don't die." Like he knew exactly what he was doing in that regard. He knew exactly how dangerous this was.
Right.
But on top of being dangerous for him, it's so reckless and so stupid.
Right.
To endanger the lives of 100 other people because you think you're going to convert them to Christianity. They speak a language that is spoken by exactly as many people as live on that island.
Yeah.
You have a 0% chance of conveying any of the ideas about your religion that you have to them.
I'm just going to scream at him in English and God will take care of the rest.
Like it says in his journal, he shouted at them, quote, "My name is John. I love you and Jesus loves you," end quote. One of the tribesmen then shot him with an arrow which pierced his waterproof Bible. Like, what are you? There's literally nothing, even if you believe that they need to be saved and they need to know about Jesus because you're doing them a favor in the afterlife or whatever it is that you think.
Yes.
You have literally no chance of conveying that information to them and a 90+% chance of ending up dead.
Or killing the rest of them.
And a very high, like, if they don't kill you, you will kill one of them just by being there. If not
John,
many of them.
Hey, John, you guys don't speak a common language, but do you speak the language of, we're gonna kill you. Here's an arrow through your possessions.
Just even if you accept his premise of, like, he needs to spread his religion in order to save the souls of these people who haven't been exposed to Jesus, there is still there's no possible positive outcome.
Yes.
Even if you accept that original premise.
There's a massive logical gap in
several of them.
But the one being the language, like, barrier.
Yeah. You know how long it would take, even if they somehow accepted you and let you stay there, it would take years upon years for, like, a trained linguist to make any sort of progress with them. You have no chance of communicating with them, guy with an undergraduate degree in a totally unrelated field.
Yeah.
You never would. You could be there for the rest of your life, and I doubt you would be able to convey the idea of your old white man in the sky who's going to save their souls to them and have them accept it.
And let's even go further and accept the impossible premise that you could get them to understand the concepts. They would look you in the face and be like, "Bro, we've been here 58,000 years before that was even invented, my dude.
Your God is 2,000 years old according to your Bible? Oh, sorry.
Cool. We're 30 times that old and we've been just fine without it and continue to be. So fuck directly off."
I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to roast it, and I don't feel like we should roast it any more than we already have. It's just, it's a shitty situation that could have been prevented about a million different times.
Right, which is why, like, I don't feel that bad for that dude.
No, I don't either. I just don't, I don't want to take too many shots at a dead dude.
I don't either. I think after researching the topic and feeling a sense of, like, you know, like we talked about Survivors International last time and the organizations that do a lot of work to keep these people safe and alive and flourishing for the sake of them and their livelihoods and cultural artifact. And, like, there's so many reasons that this preservation is kept in place. And it's a really fucking dumb way to potentially fuck all of that up, not to mention murder potentially hundreds of people.
I think it's equally stupid to make attempts to go retrieve his body.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Doesn't that introduce the exact same problems?
I mean,
unless you could somehow organize them to, like, stay far away while you do it, which you won't be able to because you can't communicate with them.
Yeah, my only sort of estimation of that is, would they try to do some equivalent of identify where it is, do like a SEAL team drop in and boat out, you know, thing in the cover of night?
That's still risky though, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's risky.
The North Sentinelese in terms of contamination, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would think they would have to like share touching of an artifact or touching of each other for some sort of contamination to really happen. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, again, I'm not trying to be a dick, but, like, if you did that, I don't know that they should do anything. I don't know.
I absolutely think they should leave it exactly as it is.
Right. I understand as a family wanting to be able to, like, bury a family member.
I don't think they're even pushing for it, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it just, even if they're not pushing for it, I understand conceptually why they'd want to do that, but I don't think you're afforded that right. If someone made that many real dumb choices to get where they got, maybe they deserve to stay.
Maybe the silliest part of this whole thing is, according to BBC at least, there's been a murder, not charge, but whatever the word is for like right below charge.
Yep.
Against, quote, unknown people.
Oh.
Like, what do you... Why? What are you doing?
We're going to arrest this island.
That it is illegal to contact.
We need big handcuffs big enough to put an island in them.
I'm a dumbass. I'm a dumbass.
I feel like it's like they just...
I'm a dumbass.
I feel like they have to do it so that they say it, and then they're going to be like, yeah, those...
I hope so, man.
Those people did kill a person, but anyway, it's Tuesday. What are we doing today instead?
Yeah. All right, let's move on. That's enough.
All right. If our last episode wasn't enough warning, this episode should be enough warning. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Don't go there. Just let them be.
If people aggressively want to be left alone, try leaving them alone.
Yes. Try that out. Maybe they have a reason.
Anyway. Are we starting with the high seas stuff?
Isolation Part 2. Yes.
Tight.
So, one of the aspects of isolation that we were actually, when we had originally planned this episode, we were going to talk about in the same episode, we were going to talk about isolated populations in different ways. But there was just so much that was interesting to be shared about the Sentinelese and the Jawara people that we decided to break them up into two parts. So, today we're talking about a very different kind of isolation, and that is the isolation of living, traveling, existing in space.
Or simulated space.
So have you been on the NASA YouTube channel lately?
I watched that video that we talked about last week.
That's pretty good, right?
I didn't really think so, but that's okay.
I thought they did a good job. I mean,
there were enough issues with like the just production of it that I had a hard time focusing on what they were actually talking about, and it felt very like forced emotionally and didn't really do it for me.
Yeah.
But it's, whatever. It's
that sounds very much like a way that Spencer would react
like
to
that.
like that.
My job is making shit like that.
Right. Mine too. I get it. We both we both work in creative fields. So it's easier, I guess, to criticize some of them.
It's like, you got one of the most famous voices in the world, and this voiceover still...
It's blended into
is boring, and like it's edited weirdly, and this music super doesn't fit, but then you like hard edited to the music. Yeah, and like tried to force weird close-ups of certain characters in this 2.5... I don't know. Whatever. Sure. It's fine.
So...
And then I still didn't understand what they were doing at the end of it.
Putting a moon base up, bro. So whether or not you want to challenge the production value of that video...
Sorry, yeah.
There are many other videos on the YouTube channel for NASA that the production value is way worse than.
You mean because they were shot in outer space?
No, because some of the videos they make are like PSA style videos that are animated to look like children's books, and they don't actually have read narration over them at all. They just have like text on screen that sometimes some words are bigger than other words.
Do they?
Yes.
I'm on their YouTube channel now.
So you can find...
You got a good, a specific one I should check out?
I'm going to read you the text of one of them that I actually transcribed.
Okay.
They have a set of 5 that is 5 hazards of human spaceflight, which are miniature PSAs that NASA has put out to teach people about the hazards of human spaceflight and how NASA's working to address them. In fact, they have a very adorable tagline. Yeah, Spencer's laughing because he's watching one right now. The tagline for these videos is "One hazard explored, one step closer to Mars." So their whole idea is like, we're illuminating the major tenets of research we're doing so that you can understand what our priorities are, and the fact that us doing one of these at a time helps us actually do shit. Yeah, bro, this is the music for these.
hostile and closed. Also, there's a typo on their first slide.
I know, bro. I know. I'm gonna read it because it's impossible to convey how ridiculously shitty that video is outside of just reading through the text quick.
Give them more money.
Holy shit, right? That came out in August of 2018. Like, that is a brand new video, and it looks like it was done by a high schooler.
It looks like one of those videos that you would watch in health class when your gym teacher who doubled as the health teacher was hungover and didn't want to teach anything and pulled it out of some like back corner of the library.
Yep. It looks like it got made in iMovie with the technology from WordArt in Microsoft Word.
I want to hear this.
No, bro. Bro, there's no voiceover. It's just words on screen set to this ridiculous music.
I'll play the music in the background. You read it.
Okay, cool. So the 5 hazards that they have are radiation, isolation, distance, gravity fields, and hostile closed environments. And I'm going to read you isolation and confinement. The problem. Behavioral issues among groups of people crammed in a small space over a long time, no matter how well trained they are inevitable. God damn it. Are inevitable. Astronauts selected for a stay aboard the space station are carefully chosen, trained, and supported. Crews for a Mars mission will undergo even more scrutiny and preparation since they will travel farther and longer than any previous human.
This music sucks.
Being more isolated and confined than we can imagine. The human risk. Some risks include decline in mood, cognition, morale, or interpersonal interactions. Development of sleep disorders is possible. Factors include small, noisy environments, an extra 38 minutes of daylight that exists on Mars, and the stress of prolonged isolation and confinement. Trips to Mars will be demanding, alternating between heavy workloads and periods of boredom. The consistent lack of fresh food and variety may add to a sense of monotony and also contribute to deficiencies in nutrition, which could contribute further to psychological and physical imbalances. The more confined and isolated humans are, the more likely they are to develop these behavioral or cognitive conditions, and this development in individuals could then contribute to team miscommunications. The key. NASA has been studying people in isolated and confined environments for years and has developed methods and technologies to counteract these possible problems. Important factors for the crew's health include the amount of lighting, movement, and sleep each crew member obtains. NASA uses clever devices to monitor assets and improve key human factors, but the crew will also be recommended to keep journals, which offer a safe place to vent frustration and also double as a tool that promotes mental and physical well-being. All of these methods and technologies will help us prepare for longer, farther exploration missions. One hazard explored, one step closer to Mars. So the content is good, but it's packaged in such a ridiculous way, it's actually hard to get value out of. But it's a relatively succinct explanation of why isolation and confinement in space is important to NASA and why they have been studying it for many years.
So one of those ways that they've been studying it is the High Seas program.
Not high sea like the beverage, y'all.
Oh, I was thinking more of the pirate type.
Or like the pirate type.
It stands for Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation, which is a bit of a stretch, but you get the idea.
Well, you know. Hi, HI, Hawaii.
Yeah. They counted the
worked it out.
They used the... Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's an isolated position on the slopes of Mauna Loa volcano on the island of Hawaii. And basically they built a self-contained habitat in which people live together for varying lengths of time, as long as a year in one instance. And its primary focus is studying some of those effects of long-term isolation or group isolation, so to speak.
There's been 6 missions so far that have varied in different what we're exploring or what we're kind of trying to learn about in each one. It's varied in how many people are there, and the lengths have varied as well. But the actual habitat that they created remains the same. So the High Seas habitat they've created it's 2 floors. The main floor is just under 1,000 square feet. It's got a kitchen, a bathroom, a laboratory area, and an exercise space. And the second floor is just where everybody sleeps, and it's about 425 square feet.
I was reading an article about it today, and I think it was the Atlantic one. And the quarters are incredibly cramped. And I was like, that's bigger than my house. I don't know if I should feel bad about my living situation or if you're bad at describing spaces, because 6 people living in my house doesn't seem that crazy.
Yeah.
Like you all have a bedroom and you have a bathroom and you have common area. Like that's not, sure, for when you're talking about like 4 months or 8 months or a year.
I was going to say, I think that's maybe more so what it is put 8 people in your house and then no one can leave for a year.
So the idea is that, or they have to wear a spacesuit. But the people who are participating in these studies, these experiments, live as much as possible like they're actually on Mars.
Yes.
So they eat freeze-dried food. They use a composting toilet, like they don't have plumbing. They take 30-second showers because they have to conserve/reuse their water. And they never leave the habitat without being fully spacesuited and helmeted.
Right.
All of their communication is simulated as if they were on Mars. So it's a 20-minute delay in either direction for any electronic communication.
So they can still email family members and they can receive emails from family members and like mission people, but
that's about it.
That's about it. And those take 40 minutes to be delivered to their family and takes 20 minutes to be delivered and then 20 minutes for one to come back.
Right. So yeah, they don't have like radio contact. They're not able to make phone calls. They can't do any streaming video, anything like that. It's basically send an email, wait 40 minutes for a reply. So even if you needed help like in the moment, you're kind of on your own.
Sort of. They had a 911 line.
Sure.
Which
we'll get to.
We'll get to. But generally speaking, it was as isolated as you can get.
They're also not allowed to see anyone other than their cohabitants for the length of their mission.
Yep.
Scientifically, they're basically trying to study how people interact and survive for long periods of time in group isolation and how those group dynamics can function. Because if we are to ever send manned missions to Mars or to the moon, they will be small groups.
Right.
And they will be very long missions, especially to Mars. So they're...
Yeah, what's the length for to Mars? Don't we think it's like over a year, isn't it? For a manned mission?
I don't know.
Let me look real quick. I'm pretty sure it is.
So whoever participates in these studies, they wear devices to track their vitals, their sleep habits, their movements throughout the day, and then they almost daily answer questionnaires about their own behavior, their interactions, the group dynamics,
mood,
and their own like experience, mood, feelings, that sort of stuff.
I saw that the I guess two receptors that they have on them, the tracking devices, actually have proximity elements in them, so they can track physically who's spending more time next to each other versus who isn't, as a way of examining interpersonal conflict. And, if Dave's going to bed every night being like, yeah, if Tim wasn't being such a dick all day long, and they're like, yeah, no, that's confirmed. Not spending much time in the same room, those two.
Or Dave and Tim's dots overlap for 30 minutes every day.
Sure. There's that. Oh, I see. I see what you did there. Or could also be they're writing in their journals that they're not getting along with that individual, but interpersonally, they have no problem spending time together and working their way through their missions. And that's another part of this that we haven't talked about. It's not just the biological receptors and it's not just the journaling and things like that they're doing, but it's also they're given tasks every week, in the range of, I saw in the range of 30 to 60 tasks a week that they have to do. And there's actual simulated space tasks, things like carrying out laboratory experiments, planting seeds, growing plants, doing more spatial things, like you said, putting suits on and going to retrieve things or doing simulated walks on the planet's surface. But every week they got to do all of those types of things, which are simulating what it would be like to research on the surface. But there's also a lot to do to actually maintain their living environment. They have to do things like clear out that composting toilet, and they have to make sure that their water's recycling properly, and they have to make sure that their solar panels are tuned up and that they're conserving enough electricity and making food and cleaning up after food. So there's all these like kind of menial tasks and chores. Yeah, day-to-day shit that's just like stay present and like doing what you're doing, but also like work-related tasks as well that are for, the research elements.
Yeah. So far, there have been 6 of these high seas missions. I think the first one was in 2013.
Yep.
And the most recent one was earlier this year. They've lasted, let's see, the first one was 4 months, second one was 4 months, the third one was 8 months. And the first 2 were a crew of 4 people, and the third one and all the ones after that, I believe, have been 6 people.
I think that's right, yeah.
So 2 4-month-long missions, an 8-month-long mission, a 1-year-long mission, and that was High Seas 4 was the year-long one.
Yep.
And Gimlet actually made a podcast about that year-long mission,
which I have not listened
called
to.
The Habitat. I listened to the first one today.
Okay.
It seems promising. I'll probably listen to the rest of them.
Cool.
Or at least keep listening until it sucks or doesn't suck.
Sure.
And then High Seas 5 was 8 months. And then High Seas 6, which started in February of 2018, was scheduled to last 8 months and only lasted 4 days.
Yeah.
They arrived. It was, I think this one was actually only 4 people.
Yeah, it was. It was the first time that they had done 4 since they went up to the 6 mark.
Yeah. And I think that was just a matter of only being able to find 4 good candidates, it seemed like, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
I don't think it was intentionally or like conceived originally to be a group of 4 this time. I think they were looking for 6 and ended up with 4 and decided to do it anyway.
I feel like I read something about someone dropping out last minute too, but maybe that was wrong. The crazy thing about this, you gotta imagine, like, doing this is a pretty severe way to live for an entire year of your life.
Well, yes. And also, in order to do it, you have to put your entire life on hold for 4 months or 8 months or a year. Like, everyone involved in this one that was scheduled to be 8 months long, they had to leave their jobs. Like, most jobs are not going to let you leave for 8 months and come back.
Right.
If you have family, if you have kids, if you have
a partner.
Yeah, or even just like you need to make sure that your bills get paid for 8 months because you can't put certain things like that on hold. You need to make sure that, like, I don't know, you still have health insurance and all the like just day-to-day recurring things. Although, a lot of them still have to occur.
I suppose you could be on your email. Emailing your health insurance agent like, hello, I am in space. Am I covered? You'd be like, I'm pretty sure you're not. I am in space.
NASA says I'm in space.
Look, man, you can't tell me the difference.
I'm on Mars. I couldn't find anything about compensation.
I couldn't either, and I looked hard as shit because I wanted to know. I mean,
because you're not making if you're not making money, even if you're not living your normal life, you're still going to have some expenses unless you can like put a lease on hold or like rent your house out or something.
There has to be money involved because if there wasn't, you would never get people who are qualified enough to get good data out of to come do this.
I would think, yeah, because especially like you're quitting jobs or taking long breaks from jobs if you have that type of situation. Anyway.
No, but I think that's a super valid like thing to think about.
You're giving up a lot in order to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, not to mention, you talked about like the 8 months of doing it, but these people also were trained before this because you have to. These people go through like really thorough trainings in Hawaii of like, here's like they take them to the site and they go like, here's where you're gonna stay. Like, here's how the fucking toilet works because they have to teach them all that stuff. Right. Before they arrive because there's no There's no one there to be like, yeah, I've done this before. Here's how all this shit works. So you're also talking about however many weeks or months, or maybe it's like a week, a month for, I didn't see anything about how long specifically the training is.
On site together, they only got 9 days for mission 6 at least.
Got it.
But there was online trainings. They did like Skype calls.
Yeah, I saw that, like interviewing and
a lot of long distance stuff. But they only arrived or only had 9 days of training together on site prior to actually starting the mission. So it started February 15th, and the first few days were overcast, which I think is pretty rare out in the middle of the ocean in Hawaii, especially like they're 8,000 feet up a volcano.
Right.
And the habitat is set up to run on a solar array that charges battery banks that power the habitat.
Which, for what it's worth, would be how you would get recurring power if you were living on an alien planet.
So they started with, I think, 3 or 4 days of overcast weather and did not have enough power to run the habitat from the solar cells. So they have a backup plan, which is a backup generator that runs on propane.
Yep.
This generator is located outside of the habitat. So they have to put on their spacesuits, leave the habitat, fire up this generator, and switch the power over from solar cells to the propane generator.
Which, for what it's worth, sounds pretty terrifying for a lot of reasons. Mostly, like, propane is a flammable gas, and there's,
Sure.
You're working on your propane generator wearing a spacesuit.
Yeah, which from the photos, they look sort of clumsy, too. They're not the sleekest of spacesuits. Which, not that any of them really are, but they look like older models, perhaps.
I would imagine that's also maybe a little bit by design to be like, this is supposed to not be the most comfortable thing you've ever worn, because that's part of it being a simulation, is you're not going to be super comfortable in this wherever you're going.
I was thinking that Mars has less gravity than the Earth, correct?
I believe that's true.
So wouldn't it be even more difficult here to move around in a spacesuit than it might be on Mars?
You're saying because it wouldn't weigh on you in the way that it would weigh on you here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that stands to reason from my dumb brain.
Although I don't know if the familiarity of Earth gravity maybe cancels that out. But anyway, so they have to suit up and go outside to fire up this generator because they had run out of power. And this is the day 4 of their 8-month mission. 2 of them suit up, go outside. 2 of them stay inside because while they're firing up the generator outside, they also have to flip a switch inside on a circuit breaker to switch the power over from the solar battery to the propane generator. So 2 people are outside, 2 people are inside. They fire up the generator, they switch it over, it's working. 2 people come back inside, take off their suits, and they find that the 2 people who were inside, flipping the switch on the circuit breaker, got a pretty serious shock in the process, like an electrical shock from the circuit breaker.
Yes.
One of them seems to have sustained a worse shock than the other. And they think this likely happened because while flipping the switch on the circuit breaker, they brushed up against live wires in the circuit breaker, which would have delivered more, I'm assuming, electricity than just like your standard 120 volts, because it's the main breaker for the habitat, which is the size of a decently large house.
So instead of taking one outlet's worth of electricity in your house, you took all of the electricity coming into your house.
Potentially. Yes.
The gravity on Mars is only about 38% the gravity of Earth. Okay. So if you were a 100-pound person would feel as if they weighed 38 pounds on Mars.
Is that how percents work?
Or a 200-pound person.
Does that mean per 100? Is that how that works?
76 pounds. So that'd be roughly me, be an 80-pound person.
Nice.
Damn, you could dunk then, bro. Can Spencer dunk on Mars?
Is that the new mission? You just got to get me to Mars.
Can Spencer dunk on Mars? Yes. Hey, we're gonna put Spencer in the habitat. We got this one experiment. It's only one experiment. Can he dunk a basketball? Yes. Cool. Great.
So the crew member that got the worst of the electric shock appeared to be in pretty bad shape, and was having some like body-wide effects from it. Feeling like very cold, having some like shaking and shivering, having some pains
inside of them.
Yeah. In the vicinity of some vital organs.
They reported sharp pain behind their shoulder blades, which I was just like, oh, that's a weird place.
There's a lot of important stuff in there.
Yeah, and that's just a weird place to like. I've never hurt behind my shoulder blades before.
Okay. Where is that?
I mean,
because when you say that, I'm picturing like between, but behind my shoulder blades is not part of my body anymore.
I mean, like,
does that mean inside?
I'm thinking between your shoulder blades and like your rib cage. So somewhere in your lung region, like the back of your lungs.
Oof.
I don't know.
Yuck.
Yeah. Yikes. No grass.
So they suddenly have this scenario where you have 4 people who are supposed to be totally isolated, literally are not allowed to see another human for the next 8 months. And you kind of need an ambulance.
Like maybe pretty bad.
Yeah. I had a hard time finding many specifics about this scenario and the after effects of this scenario.
Yeah.
I think partially because until very recently, there was still like an internal investigation going on to find out what exactly happened.
Right.
And if they were going to continue doing experiments of this type.
Right.
But anyway, they have someone who appears to need immediate
medical attention,
if
of
not
some
soon,
kind.
medical attention
Right.
from actual professionals.
Right.
Which they didn't have. They had 4 people who were mission specialists, so to speak, and they had basic first aid training, but there was not a doctor in the crew. There was not an EMT or anyone who had similar training.
Right.
So they now have this dilemma of, we technically can call 911. We have a way to get an ambulance here. But 8 months of potential data,
and however long it took to train them and prepare and make decisions to leave their lives,
is all going to be lost.
Yep.
And we may jeopardize our ability or others' ability to do experiments like this in the future.
Right.
And the funding for such experiments. But also, if we don't do anything, this person might die.
Right.
And it wasn't clear to me from any of the stuff that I read who ultimately made this call, whether it was the injured person or the group as a whole or what happened. But they did decide to call 911, originally to seek advice about if this was something they could handle internally or if they needed help.
I got the impression, for what it's worth, it was the mission commander. So they did have like a commander of the mission designated, even though they didn't formally have, like, they didn't have veto power of the rest of the group.
That part was confusing to me too, because they had that person designated, but also it sounded like the main thing they were trying to explore with this mission was how these group dynamics would evolve over 8 months.
Right.
And so it seems odd to me to assign that to someone, unless that's by design of, if we assign someone as quote unquote leader, do these 4 people stick to that? Do they deviate from that? Do they, what do they do as a group?
I would imagine there would, like, in any space mission, there would be a commander of some kind. So that you'd have to probably have some sort of power hierarchy established.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that plays into how those dynamics would work. So it makes sense that they would assign a role for that.
And also, though, I think they're aware that, especially with Mars missions, whoever is on that mission is going to have to operate almost fully independently.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to ask mission control on Earth for help with anything, really.
Right.
They're not going to be able to, it takes 40 minutes just to get a message round trip. They can't send you anything physically, obviously.
Right.
You're not getting anyone else there to help you. Like, you're going to have to do this on your own. And so I think they allowed some amount of room for that type of dynamic to develop as much as they could.
Figure it out.
Right. Because realistically, that's what it's going to be if we were to ever send a manned mission to Mars.
No doubt.
Those people are essentially on their own probably forever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're still going to be able to reach back with a radio question, but that stuff is still going to take the same amount of time as
that's not going to help you in this type of situation.
Right.
Though. If you wait 40 minutes, that
person might be dead.
Yeah.
We should probably do names really quick now because we're going to start getting into some names. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, might be helpful for designating. No,
I don't think it really matters.
All right.
And I don't know all of them anyway.
I have them if you want them.
Anyway, the crew calls 911 and they get an ambulance up to the habitat. And they decide that the EMTs decide that they do need to take the injured person to the hospital.
Yes.
Turns out that they were fine, they got treated and released within a few hours and they ended up being fine.
Yep.
But because of the weird circumstances and the potentially still very dangerous situation in the habitat, because they had apparently live exposed wires that were sending however many hundreds or thousands of volts, they evacuated the other 3 crew members from the habitat, and the experiment ended after 4 days.
And to be clear, they evacuated it after one of the women specifically who was on the mission basically was like, I don't feel safe here with this being the conditions.
Because we've been here for 4 days and someone's been electrocuted.
Someone's already in the hospital. So if we're going to do this, and we're
not getting any help with this issue in the next 8 months because we're on Mars.
Right. Y'all need to fix this stuff and we need to start it again.
Yeah.
And basically they made the decision to call the whole thing off because it had been sort of irreparably damaged by the incident itself. The other thing about it too was some of these other missions, the 6-person missions, one of them, someone did have a health issue and had to leave, but they were left with 5 people to carry on. And the way that they handled it from a simulation perspective was to pretend the person had died in space, and they sent them into the airlock and they left and then called an ambulance, and the person came and got taken by the ambulance.
But the other 5 never had any interaction with anyone else.
Never had any interaction with anyone else, and proceeded as if one of the crew members had died on the mission.
Yeah.
So that's how they handled that situation. But in this situation, they were down to 3 people, and there were no backup members. In some of the previous high seas missions, they had backup crew members in case someone had fallen ill and they needed to replace someone.
That's stupid, though, because you're not going to be able to send a backup crew member to Mars.
No, I think it was if they had fallen ill, right before, in between training and the actual launch of the program.
Right, but I'm saying once, in this case, they were 4 days in. I don't think that should have applied anyway, even if they did have someone waiting.
Yes and no. I guess the only thing I can think of would be, do you send that person in 3 months in and go, yeah, there was another manned mission behind you,
or you send that person in and they have to walk around with their shoes on their knees with an alien costume on and not speak English the whole time?
We've had contact. He lives with us now.
Once a month, you just send a new person in a gray alien costume at them.
He just comes in and fucks with people and
or you could decide to eat him if you're tired of the
That's true.
Of the freeze dried stuff.
You said to make it a simulation. We ate Dave, okay? Fuck you.
They just go full Lord of the Flies on the first one, put his head on a stake outside as a warning to the other aliens.
Just feral as fuck in 3 days. Man, we did psychoanalysis on these people. Thought they'd be fine.
Learned a lot from that one. So yeah, they stopped the mission after 4 days, and there hasn't been one since, because this spurred a lot of investigations into what happened and is this actually a viable format for this type of experiment.
Right.
Is the habitat actually safe?
Right.
Can we get money to continue doing this type of thing?
Or do we need to go out and be like, we need more money because we almost killed a person?
Right. Well, and so these missions are not organized by NASA. They're organized by a group led by the University of Hawaii. The habitat was built by an independent person named Hank Rogers, who's actually a wealthy video game designer.
Sick.
And he did a lot of things for Tetris, it turns out, and made a shitload of money, and then decided to build a space habitat.
I fucking love crazy rich people. It's so awesome.
So they don't. This is not a NASA project, but NASA provides funding for the operational aspects of it. So
there's also some, as far as I'm aware, some NASA oversight from like the research components in terms of what they ask them to do and not do and how much of it. And because NASA's the one who really needs good, clean data.
Right. This is the information
apply.
That would be useful to us when we send people to Mars.
Don't give them fruit roll-ups and Netflix, please. That would not be helpful.
So in the, whatever it's been, 8 months-ish since this happened.
Yeah, it should have ended about a week ago. Or no, sorry, 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So in that time instead, about 9 months, yeah. It's been about 9 months.
Yeah.
They did a bunch of investigations, reviews. NASA very thoroughly reviewed the project to try and decide if this is something that they want to continue funding and being involved with and something they can actually get good data from. And NASA has decided that they're going to maintain funding, but not just the way that the timing worked out with when that decision was made and when these missions need to be planned and how far in advance they need to be planned. They decided that too late to run a mission in 2019 because these had basically been happening once a year since 2013.
There was like 2 in 2014, but yeah, roughly like 1 a year-ish.
Yeah. So they are planning one for 2020, but in the meantime, Hank Rogers, who built the place and is technically the owner of the habitat.
What up, Hank?
Basically said, well, let's use this for something. This is I paid a bunch of money to build a Mars habitat. Let's just not let it sit there.
Right.
And in the meantime, he did some renovations.
Maybe specifically related to the electrical panel?
Well, it actually says, this is from that Atlantic article, they installed new floors and furniture and upgraded the computer systems.
Sick.
They spruced up the interior design to make the habitat look more, quote, spacey, and they replaced the aging spacesuits with sleek new versions. So it doesn't say that they actually addressed the electrical issue. And the university and Hank said that one of the crew members removed a panel or like a safety panel.
This is your fault.
From the circuit breaker.
Yeah.
So they were saying, we built it correctly. They modified it in a way that made it unsafe.
Yeah.
The crew members are saying the opposite, basically. Yeah. But yeah, they're doing moon studies to see what a moon base might look like or life on a moon base might look like.
Yep.
It's going to be similar in terms of isolation, but round trip radio or Wi-Fi or whatever communication with the moon is a matter of seconds instead of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So they're going to be able to have much more robust communication with the outside world.
Sure.
They're talking about doing things like even live streaming the habitat.
Yep.
So it can just be like on CBS or something.
Or
Big Brother season 92.
The moon. Dun, dun, dun.
But they'll have access to like internet and essentially real-time communication with a base or the outside world.
Which
and will also like allow the rest of the world to get more access to what's going on in there and allow more people than just NASA and the University of Hawaii to learn from this stuff.
For sure. And I think a big piece of that too is you create this, you make it way more accessible, both for participants and for observers, in a way that makes it a much more attractive prospect for people to participate in, pay attention to, then drive funding off of that attention. You know, you catch buzz because there's a live stream of 8 astronauts living together in a moon base on Hawaii on YouTube at all times. And you have a donate link on there that says like to continue funding these types of educational projects. You know, like there's a whole different level of you make a bit of a spectacle out of it. You update it to the 21st century a little bit more, and you can potentially drive the attention that's needed to get it to another level or a next level.
Yeah, I would definitely drop in on that live stream.
I would for sure do that.
What's up with y'all?
It would be fascinating. And two, to your point about like that instant communication or whatever. I mean, it's like when the ISS does their Q&A stuff and they can actually be asked a question and respond to it in real time. You know, they could do that kind of thing. How are you guys feeling? And people could have Q&As with these people who are having these simulated things.
Right. You could get, I would think, a lot more data that way too than just journal entries. You could do, you know, audio or video daily of like,
it's the real world, man. Hop in front of the camera and be like,
I would think from a psychological standpoint though, that would be more valuable. You can see people's expressions. You can hear their actual voice.
Why isn't this a TV show?
Well, because it needs to be isolated.
But there'd be a way.
You turn it into the Truman Show?
Kind of. You create, you know, you put cameras all over the place. You create like a place for people to go film themselves.
Man, I wonder what
all
that does.
Gets streamed back right away. They cut it into episodes.
Well, first of all, you'd have a much harder time getting people to agree to it.
Oh, I don't know.
Especially qualified people.
Some people might be thrilled about that.
Now you got to start doing casting.
Right.
Because the best scientists may not be, you know, people you want to look at on camera for a long time.
True. Or that one person who like really hates cats.
Right.
But then you have the girl who really loves cats, and then you just wait. They're going to fight one day. We're going to wait.
What if like every time they're not actively on a mission, Steve and Daryl are fucking, and they're both just ugly as sin? You can't air that.
I don't know, man.
You can't just have
the internet's a terrible place. People would be all about it.
You can't just have a live stream that's 90% Steve's cheeks.
I'm pretty sure we just named the show, actually, is what we called it.
90% Steve's cheeks or just Steve's cheeks?
90% Steve's cheeks. Brought to you by The Moon.
This show's 100% cheeks. So is this podcast.
We out of here.
Oh, shit.
Oh, actually, last thing.
Yeah, no, we're not out of here.
The Biosphere 2.
Yeah.
Did you read about that along the way at all?
Yeah.
I think the inspiration for the movie Biodome, or maybe vice versa, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe they were inspired by the Pauly Shore movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure.
Did you know that still exists and it's open to the public?
No, I did not.
When are we taking a road trip to Arizona?
Arizona's where it is?
And also, they do live events sometimes. Like in the Biosphere.
Excuse me?
Like concerts and stuff.
Oh, can we do a live episode?
That's what I was getting to.
Dude,
or can we at least go visit?
That would be extremely sick, and I'm very for it.
Tight.
Dope. All right.
Okay.
We out of here.
If you want to support our road trip to...
We're driving to Arizona? Fuck.
Or
that's a long way, bro.
if we don't get more support, it will be a road trip. Go to Patreon.
Good point.
Go to patreon.com/whatifpodcast. You can get a second episode of the show every single week. There's over 60 episodes in our backlog, and it's only $5 a month for double the what if. Just go to patreon.com/whatifpodcast.
$5 today, you will get 60 plus episodes of our show that you've never heard.
That's pretty buck wild if you think about that.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is cool.
They're just sitting there waiting for you to give us $5
sink your ears into.
Dude, an Americano, a fucking small Americano in Las Vegas every morning last week cost me more than $5.
And instead you get like...
Instead you can get hundreds of hours of our lives.
2 weeks worth of content. We love y'all. Thank you for supporting the show. As always, we will see you next week.
Say, you all didn't happen to do a bunch of drugs, did you?